Today on Industry Interviews, we talk to Victor Chandler, chairman of BetVictor and widely known as the visionary and pioneer of bookmaking, and arguably the most famous bookmaker in the world. I'm your host, Natalie Rydstrom. Good afternoon, Mr. Chandler, and thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I'd like to start this interview from the very beginning of the Victor Chandler family empire. Your family has a rich history in sport. Your grandfather, William Chandler, founded the famous Walthamstow Greyhound Stadium. Now, did you ever get to go to the stadium as a young lad? And did you even get to place a bet?
I went there infrequently as a young man. That side of the business, although my side of the family was shareholders, it was the rest of my father's brothers that controlled Walthamstow, and the relationship historically wasn't that great.
So from those experiences, how did you get started with Victor Chandler?
My father started the business in 1947, but tragically he died very young in 1974, and I was forced to take over the business. That's a bit of a strong word, but I was living abroad in Spain at the time and working in the hotel management business, but I found I had a mother and two sisters to keep suddenly, and there was no one else to go in the business. And although I'd worked in the business during school holidays, it wasn't or hadn't been my intention to go into it until my father became ill.
So did you feel you had a choice whether to or not take over your father's business?
There was little choice in that there was a successful business that was producing an income, and my sisters were still at school, and my mother obviously needed an income. And we were going through a bit of, the country was going through a recession at the time. Someone needed to look after the business, so I stepped in, and I was very lucky to be surrounded with some experienced people there that helped me learn the business fairly quickly.
You have come a long way since those days and are now widely regarded as a visionary and pioneer of the gaming industry. How have your experiences helped to set Victor Chandler apart from other operations and to become the gaming giant that it currently is?
I think we differentiate ourselves by giving, hopefully, what I consider the best personal service. And I believe we look after our clients better than most of our competitors, if not all. And that's why we've got clients, we've got third generation of clients with us. We've got people that have been clients for, 30 years. And that experience of meeting people on a personal level at the racecourse and dealing with people on the telephone when I first started out helped me immensely to understand, I think, the customer's needs.
How key to the success of the business was the move away from bricks and mortar in 2006 when you sold 41 shops? And was this a strategic move to really focus on the online business?
No, it wasn't. It was I sold most of my shops 10 years earlier, but we had a thought of going back into bricks and mortar. We found that it detracted from the other, or distracted us from the core business, which is obviously the online business. And also we were finding it very hard to grow the business at the size we wanted it. And we were offered a very good profit on the shops, which we'd only had for about 5 years.
So what, in your opinion, have been the biggest challenges Victor Chandler, the business, has faced in getting to where it is today?
I think the biggest challenge is always keeping abreast with the times, and it's you choose, you come to a fork in the road and you decide to go one way or the other way. And I think technology is what's changed our business, and that had to be your focus. I mean, we're without the product, you're nothing. Without the payment systems, you're nothing. So they all have to be as good as you can get them, and then you start marketing, and hopefully the customer comes to you.
It certainly seems that one constant challenge for EU gaming companies is staying ahead of the political and legal situation. There have been a number of developments recently that make me feel it might be necessary at some point in the future for operators to purchase licenses for every EU country they wish to offer their services to. Do you think this could be a realistic scenario?
It could be, but I hope it's not. What one really hopes that somehow or other there's a Europe-wide licensing system. It's a level playing field across the whole of Europe, but relying on politicians to agree is not the easiest thing in the world.
Yes, that's very true. If countries were to make it law that you had to buy a license in each individual country in the EU, how feasible do you think this would be, especially for small operators?
Well, I think what we're going to see in the business is a huge amount of consolidation over the next 5 years. The merging of businesses, the purchasing of other businesses, and as far as licensing is concerned, if the model is the French model, it's which has proven to be impossible to make a profit out of. So the models, hopefully Spain and Germany, come up with models of taxation that are realistic and then an operator can operate it. I mean, to a certain extent, what you see in France now is that there is a huge amount of money going to companies that are not frightened to operate in France and not frightened of being prosecuted. And an unregulated market, to my mind, is not what Europe should aim for in the end.
VC has a history of being a trendsetter in the area of offshore bookmaking. In fact, in 1998, you took the historic step of moving the business offshore to avoid UK gambling tax. Now that Osborne has announced plans for a UK point of consumption tax on online gambling, how are you preparing for this in your business?
Well, the first thing we're doing in preparation is fighting it. The association of the Gaming Association here in Gibraltar has put a fighting fund together. We'll be lobbying through the government in Gibraltar and lobbying individually. Obviously, we have to prepare for the worst, and because the UK is only a proportion of our business, we're in a fairly good position. I'd never, it would take a lot to convince me to move any of or part of the business back to the UK.
Okay,
or any or all of the business.
Speaking of offshore gaming, did you ever accept US players?
We had a separate business based in Antigua in the early to mid-1990s, and then we decided that it wasn't a route we wanted to go. We sold the business to Sportingbet around that time.
How was your experience of US gamblers and the industry during that time?
Well, there is a huge market. I mean, still in the States, it's proven that you can go into any bar in any city and the barman would be able to direct you to a bookmaker. So there's a huge demand for gaming there, and I think a latent market that could be the biggest and best in the world as far as operators are concerned.
And if you were to compare UK gamblers to US gamblers, are there any differences?
Well, I don't think you can compare UK gamblers to any other gamblers in the world, because we are, or historically, I think, because of the history of bookmaking and betting in the UK, I think you've got the most sophisticated set of gamblers, the most price-aware, odds-aware, there are value-aware. Betfair's educated thousands of people. There's a learning curve, put it that way.
With recent murmurings of some potential openings into America, a number of your competitors, such as William Hill and 888, have begun serious action to enter the market, such as joint ventures with land-based operators and seeking licenses. What plans do you have for America?
We have and are in talks with several operators in the States at the moment. We've been approached by a couple of operators with a view to purchase, which we've turned away. We've got a very open mind, but this has been talked about for so long, and until you see what the laws are going to be and whether it's going to be federal or state legislation, it's very hard on which way to know which way to move. And what they're talking about as far as the regulation, some of the legislation is going to be very hard to apply or to work with, as far as we know at the moment.
Before I end this interview, Mr. Chandler, I'd like to ask you one final question. You've been dubbed both the gentleman bookmaker and, according to your Wikipedia page, the fearless Indiana Jones of bookmaking, two extraordinary nicknames. Are you aware of each nickname, and is there a backstory you can share with us on how they came about?
I think the Indiana Jones came because I think, as far as European bookmaker was concerned, I was the first person to really see the potential of the Chinese market or the Asian market. And in the early 90s, I was the first one to have very high rolling Asian clients, and was willing to take a risk with those clients, both from a trust point of view and a risk in laying the size of bets that they had, because most of them wanted credit. And my few years over in Asia was a huge adventure. Beijing was a different place then to the one it is now. There weren't quite as many high-rises, and there wasn't even a decent hotel there. And it was an adventure. I was the first bookmaker to go to Settlement Day in Malaysia, when people came from all over Asia once a month to pay the bookmakers to pay each other, which was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen in a restaurant, in a private room, with suitcases full of money. And next room had the wives and children in it, and each meeting a different bookmaker paid for supper, and I was taken there by a leading illegal bookmaker who was the host for the evening. And the story I tell about that is that when they brought up the huge fish that was really served as the main course, he sniffed it and said, "Long time no swim." And it went back to the kitchen.
That is a good story, and one of many, I'm sure, but maybe that's for next interview. Thank you, Mr. Chandler, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Great pleasure.
I've been your host, Natalie Rydstrom, reporting for sportsbookreview.com.